I have mine on Mindset by Carol Dweck. And uh, just check in with us through the chat. Tell us where you are watching from, and we will get started here in just a second. I want to welcome my friend, a longtime friend, Randy Mayu. Randy, we've been talking about this book. We've talked about it so many times, you and I. And I was telling you, this is one of the first books that sort of came across my path when I came to work for SGR back in 2011. And I found this message riveting. And, I don't think it's too much of a stretch to say for me, it was transforming because I grabbed hold of this idea, which you're going to expound on, an open mindset, growth mindset versus a closed mindset. And man, it has made a huge difference. And I taught this, my kids were already in college, but I remember pressing home this lesson to them about it. And I think it's made a big difference in their life. So I'm just anxious to hear you talk about it. I want to get right to it. And so thanks for being with us as always and share with us your heart on this book, Mindset.
Thanks, Mike. And you know how my usual start. Wave if you can hear me. Okay. Can you
I
hear
got
me?
you.
Okay. All right,
Yes, sir.
good. And it's great to see all of you put in the chat where you're from. I see somebody from Maine and somebody from Tempe, Arizona, and somebody near in South Lake, Texas, which is right in my backyard. I live in Richardson. And so welcome to all of you. And I hope that you will let people know that we do this on the second Wednesday of every month. Next month is the Octopus Organization, a new book that is a terrific book. And then the following month, since Mike and I haven't picked that out, I'm going to do the Illustrated History of Professional Wrestling. Actually, we have picked out a book,
We
and
have to have a
Mike
word
won't
about
let
that
me
one.
actually do that. So anyway, Mike, I can't hear you. I took my headphones off. So anyway, I want to say a couple of words about what I do because it's kind of an important month for me personally. In April of 1998, I began an event in Dallas with a colleague called the First Friday Book Synopsis. And we meet every single month. We present two books a month. And my colleague would present one book and I would present the other book. That was every month through 2017. He suffered a stroke in 2017. So since his stroke, I have been doing both books per month. And when you add another book club where I present books to, I have now presented over 675 books, different books with these synopses and briefings. And so this is kind of an anniversary month for me. We had our 28th anniversary. And because of one month with an ice storm and one month, maybe the month that he had a stroke, I only did one book. We have presented exactly 671 books at the First Friday Book Synopsis. Here's what everybody knows. If you read, you learn. And the deeper dive you take into a book, the more you learn it. What I try to do in my briefings is simulate some kind of deep dive into the content of these books. And that's what I'm after. And I do hope that you find these useful. I appreciate you coming on. I'm very handout intensive. I'll have you mark things up. I hope you've got your handout ready. And so here we go. The name of this book is Mindset, the New Psychology of Success. I have a story to tell you. One day I did this for a client of mine. It was a remote presentation over WebEx to a team at Cisco. And the guy organizing this, who invited me to do it, waited until it was over and I had finished my presentation. And then he asked one of the participants to chime in with his response and his thoughts about my presentation. Well, the participant had taken a class from Carol Dweck, the author of Mindset, at Stanford. He was a graduate of Stanford, and she is a professor at Stanford. And so Jason, the guy organizing the event, said to this guy, okay, give everybody your impression of how Randy did on the presentation because you heard Carol Dweck present this. And here's what he said. I've never forgotten it. He said, I wish to goodness that I had heard Randy's presentation before I took the class and had his notes. I would have been the most knowledgeable student in the class. So he was saying, I nailed the concept well. And that's what I try to do, is let the author speak through me on the key elements of what is in a book. So get your pen ready. Here we go. Front page, Mindset, the New Psychology of Success. Why is this book worth our time? Number one, our mindset truly does have a significant impact on the way we build our lives. This book will help us identify our primary mindset. Number two, a fixed mindset is an enormous negative force. Circle that. A fixed mindset is an enormous negative force. This book will help us combat the fixed mindset. And number three, the growth mindset is an enormous advantage. This book will help us become very intentional in developing and maintaining a growth mindset. Let me kind of state the obvious. You hire somebody new, or you're a teacher, maybe an adjunct professor, and you make this assessment just on how somebody looks or how somebody sounds. And you say to yourself in your own mind, well, this person's going to go about this high and that'll be it. That's the fixed mindset. The growth mindset says this person is just getting started. There is no telling what heights he or she can reach, what accomplishments he or she can accomplish. You have this concept of they've got more to learn. They can keep growing. They can keep getting better. They're going to be phenomenal. That's the growth mindset. You may know of a book by Malcolm Gladwell. He's most famous for Outliers, but he's written quite a few others, The Tipping Point, and he wrote a book called Blink. And I got lucky. I read the book, and he was coming to Dallas, and I got to hear him speak. And when he finished speaking, it was a room with about 100 people. He took questions, and I raised my hand, and I asked him this question. Is there anything in your own thinking and your own practice that has changed from your research in writing this book? And he paused, and he said, I've always been opposed to the idea of school uniforms. He said, I think people need their creativity. They don't need to all wear the same uniform. But he said, I've come to this conclusion. In my research, I've discovered that teachers take a look at the way a student looks, the way a student dresses, and they make an immediate judgment. That person will not be very accomplished. This person would be more accomplished. And they make that judgment based on the way the student looks and the attire they are wearing. He said, I believe that everyone wearing the same outfit helps the teacher give everybody a better shot at success. Well, he's describing the difference between the fixed mindset and the growth mindset. And I think it's fascinating to think about the ways that we, again, forgive the bluntness of this, just pass judgment on people and assume they can only go this high and no further. So that's the idea. All right, turn to page 2, and we now have a number of pages of the best of the highlighted passages. So I'm going to read a bunch of these. From the introduction, number 1. One day, my students sat me down and ordered me to write this book, Carol Dweck says. They wanted people to be able to use our work to make their lives better. Number 2, My work is part of a tradition in psychology that shows the power of people's beliefs. These may be beliefs we're aware of or unaware of, but they strongly affect what we want and whether we succeed in changing it. Number three, changing people's beliefs. Even the simplest beliefs can have profound effects. Well, you're going to keep thinking about the way you think about other people and, hold on, the way you think about yourself as we go through the highlighted passages from this book. Number five, now we're finished with the introduction, we're into the book. My work has been about growth, and it has helped foster my own growth. These are quotes from the author. It is my wish that it will do the same for you. Number seven, these children, and she did a lot of research on teaching children, but this has enormous influence and relevance for the workplace. Number seven, these children obviously knew something I didn't, and I was determined to figure it out, to understand the kind of mindset that could turn a failure into a gift. What did they know? They knew that human qualities such as intellectual skills could be cultivated. And that's what they were doing, getting smarter. And so these children, they failed at something and then they wanted to get better at it, versus children who failed at something and they would say to themselves, I'm just a failure. And so those are the two mindsets within the children, and then the teacher has to help them arrive at that growth mindset. Number 10, scientists are learning that people have more capacity for lifelong learning and brain development than they ever thought. Put a star beside number 10, and I'm going to give you Randy's little encouragement. Read more books. More than that, always have one book going. You can read more than one book at a time. Always have one book going in something that you know very little about, to really stretch your horizons and help you think about something that you could learn that you've never learned before. My brother, my older brother, has a PhD from Texas A&M in range management. He was the leading expert in the country on what grows on what parcel of land for a while. He was giving scientific papers. He's amazing. He's retired now, and here is what he is immersed in. He wants to know when the first human beings that we would define as a human being arrived in North America. I mean, he is reading books and he is watching videos and he is delving into research. He's doing everything except going and doing the original archaeological dig. He says, I'm too old for that. But he's learning something new. Keep learning something new, whatever it is. That will help you understand that you have more to learn and you can keep growing. Turn to page 3. Number 16. By the way, when you see a quote during this in this section in big bold font or in bold font, that's my emphasis. So, number 16. Instead, as you begin to understand the fixed and growth mindsets, you will see exactly how one thing leads to another. How a belief that your qualities are carved in stone leads to a host of thoughts and actions. I just can't get any better at this. I just can't get any smarter than this. And how a belief that your qualities can be cultivated leads to a host of different thoughts and actions, taking you down an entirely different road. Oh, this is exciting to discover. Oh, I did not know this. Oh, I want to keep going. The fact that something is in a book doesn't mean that it's right, correct. And so what you become as you become a serious reader is you become a discerning reader. And you begin to choose your sources wisely. You curate your own building of knowledge. I hate to tell you this, but there are a lot of books in business, forgive me for putting it this way, that are barely worth reading. On the other hand, there's something you can find in every book, but there are better books, just as we seek to know the best practices, not just to copy them, but to tweak them and make them even better. And so you don't want to copy the worst practices, and you don't want to learn from the worst books. So you want to keep learning from the best sources. That's the idea. Number 18, Howard Gardner, in his book Extraordinary Minds, concluded that exceptional individuals have a special talent for identifying their own strengths and weaknesses. I hate to tell you this, you've got some of both. It's wonderful that you have strengths, but you ought to be, we all ought to be, we should try to be aware of our own weaknesses. Where do we need to improve? And so I'm reading from 18. The other thing exceptional people seem to have is a special talent for converting life setbacks into future successes. So they do fail, but they learn from the failure and they turn that into a future success. Number 21, is success about learning or proving you're smart? Now, underline that phrase, proving you're smart. And you know some people like this. They want to prove how smart they are. You may have had that tendency yourself. I may have had that tendency myself. But the moment I want to do that, I'm taking away my learning mode. And that's not good. And so, number 21, I divide the world into the learners and the non-learners. This is a good place to put the quote in from Satya Nadella, the CEO of Microsoft, who wrote a book a while back, and in it he said, you cannot be successful as a know-it-all. Instead, you want to be a learn-it-all. Don't be a know-it-all, be a learn-it-all. Well, here Carol Dweck says, I divide the world into the learners and the non-learners. Number 22, those who lean toward a growth mindset agree that you can always substantially change how intelligent you are. You can increase your level of intelligence. But those with the fixed mindset don't want to expose their deficiencies. Instead, to feel smart in the short run, they were willing to put their college careers at risk. This is how the fixed mindset makes people into non-learners. Only people with a growth mindset paid close attention to information that could stretch their knowledge. What information can stretch your knowledge? Number 24, people in a growth mindset don't just seek challenge, they thrive on challenge. If you only go through life doing stuff that's easy, shame on you. Every now and then, I choose a book to present, and when I get it and take a look at it and realize, number one, how many pages it has, and number two, how much in it I know nothing about, I get a little panicky. But every time I tackle one of those books, I learn more about more than I ever expected to. A book that I recently presented was 1929 by Andrew Ross Sorkin, about the collapse of the financial system in 1929 and the Great Depression. I didn't know enough about that. And that big, thick book was my education. It was a masterpiece. I could tell you a few other arenas where I've done something similar. Where have you done that? Okay, turn to page 4. Number 28. Chuck Yeager, the hero of The Right Stuff, the first pilot to break the sound barrier, Beg to differ. He said there is no such thing as a natural born pilot. Somebody had commented there are just natural born pilots. Whatever my aptitude or talents, becoming a proficient pilot was hard work, really a lifetime's learning experience. The best pilots fly more than the others, and that's why they're the best. So take your pen and write over in the margin the phrase 10,000 hour rule. You probably know that from Outliers by Malcolm Gladwell. He says it takes 10,000 hours to master something. He has very specific examples. Well, the reality is that it's not any 10,000 hours. There's a book named Peak, written by, forgive me, I always get these backwards, Erics Anderson or Anders Ericsson. And he's the guy that did the original research that became Gladwell's 10,000 hour rule. And he says it's not just any 10,000 hours, it is 10,000 hours of deliberate practice, working on things where you've got to get better. In Yeager's story, it would be many flights, thousands of hours of flights with an after action review every time. What did I do wrong? What did I do that was intended to be done? What did I not do that should have been done? And so it's hard work to master anything, and you won't put in the work unless you believe you can get better at it. That's the critical factor. Number 29, the great UCLA men's basketball coach John Wooden says you aren't a failure until you start to blame. What he means is you can still be in the process of learning from your mistakes until you deny them. Number 30. Now, this is an important phrase. I want you to hear it carefully. I've got to read it carefully. The more depressed people with the growth mindset felt, short of severe depression, the more they took action to confront their problems, the more they made sure to keep up with their schoolwork, and the more they kept up with their lives. The worse they felt, the more determined they became. People with the fixed mindset were crushed by depression, but people with the growth mindset, short of clinical depression, were able to keep growing and to keep improving and get better. Number 34, when my graduate students and I first discovered the mindsets, fixed and growth, they would catch me in the fixed mindset, smile kindly, and let me know it. I teach speech as an adjunct professor at the college level in Dallas. I'm going to make a confession. I still look at students almost how they look, sometimes how they talk, and in my mind pass judgment on what they can accomplish and what they can't. And I have a student this semester, and I wasn't sure about this student. And this student gave a speech. Notice I'm doing my best to hide if it's a male or female. This student gave a speech that bowled me over. Terrific writing, great construction, delivered well. She surprised me. I said she. She surprised me. And that reminded me that I need to watch my own temptation to put in the fixed mindset in my evaluations. All right, number 37. Sometimes you plunge into something because you're not good at it. This is a wonderful feature of the growth mindset. You don't have to think you're already great at something to want to do it and to enjoy doing it. And I got news for you. When you start something new, you're awful at it. You don't look like you know what you're doing. There are stories about people who first throw a baseball and they don't throw well, and then they keep at it and they get better. you get better and you begin to look like you know what you're doing. And then if you keep at it, you become like a natural. But it's not a natural, it's a lot of work. Turn to page 5. Number 45, my major conclusion is what any person in the world can learn, almost all persons can learn if the provided with the appropriate prior and current conditions of learning. Now, you may not be able to become the Wimbledon champion in tennis, but you could become proficient in tennis, enough to enjoy the game. And by the way, the recent research says that it's the best sport to play for longevity. So you can learn something even though you start worse than a novice. Number 49. This happens mainly to people who are in a fixed mindset. When you're given a positive label, you're afraid of losing it. And when you're hit with a negative label, you're afraid of deserving it. When people are in a growth mindset, the stereotype doesn't disrupt their performance either way. They don't say, oh, I've arrived. They keep wanting to learn. And they don't say, I'm awful. They keep wanting to learn. Number 52, Michael Jordan wasn't a natural either. He was the hardest working athlete, perhaps in the history of sport. I could tell you stories about the ways that Michael Jordan demonstrated that he was always wanting to learn to get better. Look at this last quote, last line in this quote. Former Bulls assistant coach John Bach called him a genius who constantly wants to upgrade his genius. I love that about Michael Jordan. All right, turn to page 6, number 54. As Billie Jean King tells us, the great women's tennis player from decades ago, the mark of a champion is the ability to win when things are not quite right. When you're not playing well and your emotions are not the right ones. Number 55, that great coach, John Wooden. I believe ability can get you to the top, says Wooden, but it takes character to keep you there. Number 59, obviously, a company, an organization, a city that cannot self-correct cannot thrive. That's profound. Self-correction is a great skill to develop. You've got to acknowledge, I'm missing it here. I need to correct here. Number 65, although managers, of course, want to find the right person for a job, the exactly right person doesn't always come along. However, training and experience can often draw out and develop the qualities required for successful performance. When you hire a learner. And when you hire a learner, they can learn and grow into some of the challenges of the job. Number 68, Daniel Goleman, famously the man who popularized emotional intelligence, struck a responsive chord. It said there are social emotional skills, and I can tell you what they are, and you can develop them. All right, turn to page 7. Number 83. Find something important about yourself that you'd like to change and take the first step. Do something outrageously growth mindset in the service of what you'd like to change. Project yourself 25 years into the future. Write me a letter about where you are in your life and all the struggles, disappointments, hardships, and failures you've encountered along the way. And number 84, change can be tough, but I've never heard anyone say it wasn't worth it. Well, those are a few of the best of my highlighted passages. I do encourage you to read all of this handout very carefully in the next couple of days, and that will help the book sink in. But now turn to page 8. By the way, Mike Mowry said, get your coffee. This is kind of cherry Dr. Pepper zero sugar, but it's a generic from Kroger. All right, page 8. These are the most important thesis excerpts of the book. Your mindset really does determine who you are. If you have a fixed mindset, your ceiling is set. You can only do so much, accomplish only so much, and no more. If you have a growth mindset, you have so many more possibilities open in front of you. You need to cultivate, to grow your growth mindset. And you need to help others develop a growth mindset. This book is about developing and maintaining such a growth mindset. And now you ask yourself, in your city, in your department, do you believe that people can keep getting more accomplished, more skilled, smarter, better? Everybody on the team. Turn to page 9. This is from the book, kind of pulling together the key content. Every word in action, from parent to child, really from anyone seeking to shape others, sends a message. I mean, you've all heard stories of a parent who will say, you will never amount to anything. I mean, that is almost the death knell. It takes a lot of undoing to fix that memory in a person. And so a parent and a teacher with the right phrase or the wrong phrase. I had a student in my speech class one semester. She got up to give her first speech. And I don't know how to describe this. She could not get to a second sentence. She said a sentence, she started crying, she started sobbing, she ran out of the room. I went out of the room, caught her, sat down with her. Long story short, she had a very embarrassing presentation in about the 8th grade. And the teacher humiliated her. And she was scared to death of getting up in front of anybody ever again. I wish I had time to tell you what I did to work with her that semester. She could write a good speech. And at the end of the semester, I was the only one in her audience, but she stood and she delivered the whole speech without crying, with confidence. That was a real success story of someone who had been damaged. You need those success stories in your work with other people. All right. So at the top of the page, every word and every action from parent to child, really from anyone seeking to shape others, sends a message. Either you have permanent traits and I'm judging them, or you're a developing person and I'm interested in your development. Thus, the two mindsets, the fixed mindset, carved in stone, the growth mindset, just the starting point for further development. Now, the book has lots of stories. There's a story about Lee Iacocca, and I don't want to badmouth him, but he really had a great success and then kind of a second great success, but then squandered everything because he was not a learner. I told you about the depression, the struggle with depression and the two mindsets. And Billie Jean King says this book ought to be read by parents with daughters who are athletes to help them know how to encourage them and how to move them along. There's a brilliance of the movie Groundhog Day, where he keeps learning until he finally gets it that he had to learn it. And it really is a remarkable movie with that lesson. Mike Mowry, maybe Mike, at the end, you might want to tell that art story from the book. And that's a story about learning art, and you think you can't, but a little growth mindset, you're not bad. So that's the idea. Here's an observation. This is a treasure trove of stories about accomplished women, especially in multiple fields. Some men, but plenty of women. So, teachers, athletes, business leaders in multiple arenas. We know the commonly known success stories: Michael Jordan, Tom Brady. So, when I read a book like this that tells stories of different groups, different people, there's a wonderful book called The Power of Pressure named by Dane Jensen. And he's Canadian, so he tells stories about Canadian athletes and Canadian women athletes. So I love to read stories of people that I did not know much about. What creates the fixed mindset? The wrong kinds of praise, praising the wrong things. Never praise the fixed. Praise effort toward the challenging process of growth. Don't say to your child, "You're so smart." Say to your child, "You learn so well." You hear that difference? You're so smart. You learn so well. Don't say thanks for helping. Say thanks for being a helper. Subtle vocabulary shifts can make a difference. Never praise effort that is not really expended. Don't say you did that so well when you know they were a touch lazy about it. They've got to have put in the effort, and praise the effort. Praise the embrace of new strategies of learning and growth. In other words, if something is not working, change the strategy. And this is subtle but important. Only praise the process when it is tied to outcomes. So praise process and outcomes together. So the two mindsets, here's a little table: the fixed mindset and the growth mindset. Fixed, low effort; growth, high effort. Fixed, results; growth, process. Fixed, lie and exaggerate. So telling children they're smart in the end made them feel dumber and act dumber, but claim they were smarter. Versus more honest about current capability, willing to ask for help. And fixed prompts one to avoid challenges so as to not look like a failure. I want to look like a success. I'm going to do the things that I'm only successful at. Versus prompts one to embrace challenges, to even seek challenges for their growth potential. Growth. Students with a growth mindset earn better grades as the challenges increase. So here is teaching and coaching and training from the growth mindset. You correct, you help, you show, you help, you praise efforts that result in progress, and you avoid judging from the fixed mindset perspective. Turn to page 10. On the left, the fixed mindset with its fear of failure can result in the dangerous adoption of groupthink. If you think everybody's got all the answers, then you get a room full of people with all the answers, and you end up with a very bad answer. The book talks about John Kennedy and the Bay of Pigs, and every military leader in the room said this is going to be a success, almost a walk in the park. What a disaster. In education, in a relationship, at work, the growth mindset calls for a belief in the ongoing development and growth of every person. Students, athletes, people you work with, they can all grow and change for the better. Help them believe that. The growth mindset helps one cultivate perseverance and resilience. And so beware, I'll skip one, beware this misunderstanding. The growth mindset is only about putting in the effort. It involves putting in great effort, but effort alone is not enough. It is putting in the right effort, deliberate practice, effort that works. If it's not working, if you're working hard at something and it's not working, change strategies. The message of this book, you can change your mindset. Well, we're about out of time. I'm going to skip the halo effect. You might want to read about that. But on the right, some lessons and takeaways. 5 of them. Number 1, you and I have some of the 2 mindsets. We all do. Be really, really vigilant against your fixed mindset tendencies. Ms. Dweck recommends that you give your fixed mindset a name, really. Homer is at it again. Number 2, cultivate the growth mindset in every area of your life, your relationships, your work life relationships, your personal and physical development. Number 3, become intentional about helping others cultivate their growth mindsets. Number 4, be very careful about what and how you praise and criticize. Very careful. Focus especially on this. Praise the efforts that enhance the growth process. And number 5, if you have young children, read this book and maybe give a copy of this book to the teachers of your children. Well, this page comes from a website that describes the fixed versus the growth mindsets. I hope you found this useful. Mindset, the new psychology of success. Back to you, Mike Mowry.
Hey, thank you so much, Randy. Man, number 1, this is a great handout. Very useful, great presentation. I could listen to this for a long time. But I also want to encourage people to get the book and read it, because
Yeah.
this is one of those books that it can be have a huge change on the way we coach, the way we grow, and I just really recommend it. The story Randy was mentioning, there's a story about people who are like myself, not very talented in art. And I'm married to an artist, and I would put myself as the very low abilities in art. And they showed some things that they drew, and they would look like things I draw, like a 5-year-old drew them. And then they gave them just a little bit of art teaching on some hows, some mechanics, and they drew again. And in the book, they showed the differences between what was first drawn and then what was drawn later. And it's like night and day. You wouldn't really believe that the same person had drawn those 2 things. Now, for me, I'm still not really interested in art, but that example has helped me a lot to think, with some instruction and some growth and some thinking, I can get better. And so I hope you'll take that book. Randy, I just want to go back to one other thing. Your story about the student that you helped who had such a hard time on the speech at first was so touching to me. And I see this in you so often. You care about every person. I've watched this when you and I trained together, and I can be kind of 30,000 foot level and maybe not as focused on the individuals I need to be. And time again, you've inspired me and touched me by seeing how you care about every person growing. And so this book is really a book about how you do. And I appreciate that. And it makes a great impact. And I just wanted to make sure I noted that.
Thanks, Mike. Thanks, Mike.
You bet. I hope
Um,
that you've enjoyed this.
Mike, hold
Go
on.
ahead.
Just for the record, I will not have a growth mindset about coffee.
Well, we all have our
My,
limitations, I
my,
guess.
my wife wishes I did. So
Yeah.
next month, second
Uh,
Wednesday, the Octopus Organization. It's another terrific book. So
yeah, that will be great. Well, thanks everyone. Hope you've enjoyed this. Thank you, Randy. Thank you, Lisa Shook. Always so reliable behind the scenes. Hope you have a